Hi, and welcome back to Dirtbike's Premix video series, where it's all about two-strokes. Custom dirt bikes come and go, but there's something especially cool about a Honda CR500 project. In this episode of the Premix series, we get to check out two of them. One represents the glory years of the 500 two-stroke, and the other is something that would exist today only if Honda had kept the 500 in its lineup. Nik Gubert of NLAB Studios built them both. First, he teamed up with Italian fabricator Andrea Rapaccioli to create a hybrid with a 1996 Honda 500 motor and a modern aluminum Honda chassis. The bike is a work of fine art. In the past, though, we've seen beautiful Honda AFs that didn't work as well as the original steel frame bike. So as a control measure, to see how the finished product worked, Nik also built a Honda with the original frame. That way he could grade himself when he was through. Gubert's project was conceived when Tyler Bowers raced a steel-framed Kawasaki KX500 at the 2019 Red Bull Straight Rhythm. French Supercross star Thomas Doe wanted to race in 2020, and Gubert figured that this project would be perfect. He found that a 2019 or later CR500AF frame would not work for the project, simply because there was no room for the Kickstarter. The 2018 frame, however, still allowed just enough space to get a 500 motor in place, Kickstarter and all. The pieces for the project were all shipped to Rapaccioli in Cortemaggiore, Italy, to be pieced together. And then COVID-19 hit. The 2020 Straight Rhythm was canceled and the whole project went on the back burner. The pandemic further complicated the build because parts became scarce. It's already difficult to find original parts for a 35-year-old motor, but even modern items for the chassis were back-ordered. The fabrication, at least, could go forward. There are a number of obstacles that had to be overcome for any project like this. The motor has a center port exhaust, whereas the frame is designed to accommodate a right side exhaust. The intake has to go around the shock rather than over it, so forth. Rapaccioli had already dealt with most of these problems for other projects. For the most part, Gubert used original Honda parts. An OE right side engine case from a later model was used for the quick access clutch cover, which was a Boyson part. An FMF pipe and silencer were modified to work with the new frame. The suspension was reworked by Lanier, and DID Dirt-Star rims were laced up to the Honda hubs. Eventually, it all came together, although it was a year past the original planned completion date. The steel frame CR500R was assembled simply because Gubert had accumulated so many spare parts in the process of building this hybrid. At one point, he placed an ad for a spare motor because he wanted an electrical system, a more or less complete '89 model materialized, and he jumped on it. The process of restoring an original 500 is in some ways more difficult than fabricating one with a modern chassis. It's very difficult to find authentic parts. In vintage racing circles, there's a big difference between a display bike and a race bike. If you find perfect original parts, you don't want to wear them out on the track. Gubert's steel frame bike was intended to be a racer, which meant he did not concern himself with finding period-correct stock parts. That's how it ended up with a desert fuel tank and aftermarket fenders. Riding the 500AF was a great experience. If you've never ridden a 500 two-stroke, it definitely should be on your bucket list. They're not as fearsome as many people say. In fact, the motor on the 500 hybrid was surprisingly smooth. You just have to stay in front of it. You need to plan things out and be more deliberate. It handled more or less like a normal modern bike. Sitting on the hybrid feels pretty much like any other bike. It handles more or less like a modern bike. The bars are in the right place, the seat tank junction is flat, and the overall layout feels normal. The steel frame 500, on the other hand, feels completely foreign to a modern rider. We didn't realize how drastically ergonomics have changed over time. The seat seems to drop you into a pocket. In order to shift your weight forward, you don't necessarily scoot forward much as lean. In the seated position, it seems like the bars are high. In the standing position, they feel droopy and low. Clearly, you could get used to all these things. David Bailey rode pretty well on a bike that was laid out just like that. The other 500 took less adjustment time, but it was still hard to ride them back to back. By the time we were done, we developed respect for both bikes, but found them difficult to compare. So will the 500 ever make it to the Straight Rhythm? We can't say, but it's something we would all love to see. To see more bikes on our Premix video series, check out the playlist on our YouTube channel And be sure and find Tyler Bauer's 500 Kawasaki, The Unit. Also, check out dirtbikemagazine.com for all the latest on 2-strokes, 4-strokes, motocross, off-road racing, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Be sure and click on that subscribe button too. Thanks a lot.